everybody. Welcome to Grove's Learning Organization. We are so glad that you are here. I'm going to give everyone a little bit of time to get into our room here. We're so happy that you're spending your afternoon with us and our wonderful panel of esteemed faculty at Grove's Academy. We know that this is a very important topic to so many families, executive functioning and their incoming middle and upper school students. That's such an important time and development of our executive function skills. So we're really excited to be offering this new event with our faculty to really take a deep dive into understanding that experience at Grove's Academy. So it's a special panel today because you have members of our admission team combined with some of our faculty members to walk you through the experience and answer your questions. My name is Nancy Segretti. I'm our Director of Growth and Enrollment Operations at GLOW, and I'll be your host for today. So if you have any questions during the event, you can put them in the chat, and I will answer any questions that are kind of technical or issues that you're experiencing. If you have questions about the content or about the Grove's Academy experience for our panelists, we will have time for questions at the end, but you're free to put them in the chat at any point in the presentation when the question dawns upon you. And then I'll jump on at the end and help moderate those. A few housekeeping items is that your cameras and your microphones have been turned off. So if you need to communicate with us, the chat, again, use the chat. We are recording our event today, so you will receive a recording afterwards that you can watch anytime you'd like. And again, we're so pleased to have you here. And I'm going to get us started off by handing it over to Erica Sutton, who is our Director of Admission. And then very soon we'll be hearing from our faculty. Erica, take it away.
Thanks, Nancy. Welcome to all. Again, I'm Erica Sutton. I'm the Director of Admissions. I know some of you that are on the webinar today I have spoken with. Some of you I haven't. I just want to real quick take you through a little bit of information about Grove if this is your first contact with us today. So just quickly, I wanted to put up our mission, our vision, and our values just to kind of ground us in what Grove's Academy does. Our mission is to build confidence, success, and purpose through transformative learning experiences. Our vision is to redefine the way our nation is taught, one student, one teacher, and one school at a time. And our values, what we value is authenticity, collaboration, compassion, discovery, and tenacity. So that's just a little bit about who we are and what we do at Grove's Academy. We are an ecosystem of services. Really at the heart of our ecosystem is our school, and that's what we're going to be focusing on today, specifically how we support students with their executive functioning skills in our middle school and high school. Grove's Academy has been around for 51 years, and we've always served kind of the same profile of students with language-based learning disabilities like dyslexia and dysgraphia, for example, and or ADHD. Many of our students struggle with executive functioning skills, which is why it is a very important piece of the puzzle at Grove's Academy. But I'd also like to just make everyone aware that we also have our Grove's Literacy Partnerships, which is using Grove's method curriculum in K-3 classrooms in 86 schools around the Twin Cities. And we have our Grove's Learning Center, which some of you on the call today maybe have already had services at our Grove's Learning Center. That is our community-facing services where we provide speech-language services, diagnostic testing, summer programs, and tutoring. And at the end of the call today, I'll put up some upcoming events. We are in our application process for the summer program currently as well, if that's something of interest to you. Briefly, I just wanted to touch on that Grove's Academy is really a place that values belonging for our students. Our students come to Grove's with varied experiences, and a lot of them have had some trials and tribulations before they get to Grove's Academy and maybe aren't feeling so great about their school experience and specifically are lacking executive functioning skills to really be successful in a mainstream classroom environment. And so we are definitely an institution that embraces differences, celebrates differences, really treats the child's individual needs, as well as cultivates a community of belonging and acceptance. That's really a pillar of growth. And again, primarily we're serving students with language-based learning disabilities like dyslexia and dysgraphia and ADHD. And what we find is when students come into our community, they're surrounded by peers that are like them, that have had similar experiences and have a deep understanding of the journey they've been on to get to Groves Academy, which organically creates this kind of open and accepting environment for our students. So without further ado, I'm going to stop talking because I am not the main show today. I'm going to throw it over to our Groves Academy faculty, 2 of our middle school teachers and 1 of our upper school teachers, that's going to talk more specifically today about how we support executive functioning skills with our students in the academy experience in middle school and upper school grades. So I will stop my share and I will invite them to take it away.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Michael Young. I'm a teacher in the middle school here at Groves Academy, and I'm so happy to be here with you. Today, we are going to be starting out with a quick introduction to what EF is. Then you'll hear from myself and Kristen McCloskey about our middle school, followed by Andy Tolan talking about the upper school, and we'll end with some time for question and answers.
So what is executive function? Chances are if you're here with us now, you know a little bit about it, but just to get us all on the same page and using some of the same vocabulary, just like we do with our students, I'm going to give us a broad overview. It's the brain's ability to coordinate the thinking and behavior needed to start, sustain, monitor, and adjust one's attitudes and behaviors to achieve a goal. This is the definition that the upper school uses in our EF class. Or as students would say, it's more frontal lobe stuff. And they're right. A lot of the executive control network relies on the functionality of the prefrontal cortex or frontal lobe. So that's what executive functioning is.
And as we're thinking about why we're here today, the reason for our approach is because school is really hard for some of our students. Many students with executive function challenges may be misunderstood or feel misunderstood when they're in school. People don't understand why they're having the struggles that they're having, and this can lead to anxiety for them about being in school and also be harmful for their self-esteem. So our role here is to help students to understand what executive function is, how it's working in their life, and that it's something that they can work on with our guidance to grow and develop that. And by doing that, we help them develop a sense of agency and so that they can feel control. And this helps lead to greater self-regulation and also a reduction in the stress that comes from the challenges that they're facing.
So what do the students actually do regarding executive functioning here at Groves? Well, first of all, they'll come to understand what their own strengths and weaknesses are within the context of EF. They will develop or learn how to use some strategies that work for their specific profile. There'll be lots of discussions about how the brain works. They will share their experiences with one another and make connections and understand that they're not the only ones that struggle. A big part is that they will come to understand that the purpose of school, of course, their teachers want them to understand facts and know some content and understand a principle. But it's also about the how. How do I learn? How do I absorb new information and move forward? How do I apply it? And that is a skill and a set of behaviors, whatnot, that they will need for the rest of their life. We often talk about at Groves how the process is often more important than the content. So that they, again, develop that fundamental skill of learning how to learn. And then so they can apply those skills in novel situations and problems. And again, that helps to build their own confidence as they go out into the world and explore, okay, what does life after Groves mean for me? If they've got that sense of agency, as Michael mentioned, they are in such a strong position to take on what comes next.
So as everybody remembers from their own experience, middle school is a time of change, and that comes with a lot of increased demands on our students, on all students, and those things can have a major impact when executive function is an area of challenge. Things are no longer self-contained. Students have to navigate lockers, multiple classes, materials for multiple classes, the expectations of different teachers, and all of those things just really increase the demands on their executive functioning skills, which they may or may not be getting the support they need with. So our point of view is that it's really important as students enter this time for us to meet them where they're at and set them up for success so that they can be put on a path to navigate these new responsibilities and find success in middle school.
Some of the common challenges that we see here at Groves, yet I also want to make clear that this is not at all limited to Groves. These are challenges that middle school students often arrive with. They forget the things they need. They might leave their lunch on the kitchen counter. The homework that they completed last night is sitting on the kitchen table. Or maybe there's materials for a special project that they're doing in science class that they worked hard to put together but is left at home. Sometimes they show up without having done their homework, and they're behind the 8 ball a little bit in getting an assignment done. Oftentimes, some of our middle school students have difficulty estimating time. They get an assignment in class, and then you can hear the groans, and it's like, this is going to take forever. So we work really hard on breaking that down and to show them that, no, it's not going to take forever. You are assessing it in an inaccurate way, or just give them a strategy so that they have something, a time estimation that's more concrete. A hallmark that we see a lot is that they don't check their work for quality. It's a race to be done. I just want to get my homework done so I can go play a video game, so I can go outside and ride my bike, whatever the case may be. But learning how you have to take the time to make sure you've done your best work. Many middle school students have trouble reading social cues. Sometimes I like to say that teachers are just another form of a parent, and especially in middle school, I think that is true because, of course, we're working with the content and the academic growth, but there's also social conflict that comes about as our kids get older and they try to interact with each other more independently. They may misread a facial expression or a tone of voice or just coming from two different perspectives. That's very common. Another big one is starting a task that they just, either they find it really, really difficult or they're not interested. That can be just a giant mountain for them to climb. So we work on making that easier and providing some strategies. But those are a lot of the challenges that we see here in our kids.
So at our school, we thank you for smiling, Andy. At our school, especially to working on these EF skills that I want to tell you about. We know who we serve. We know who our kids are when they're coming in at the beginning of the year. And so because of that, we start out the year in really intentional ways, trying to set them up to know that they're in a safe place where they're able to find success. And what that means is before we get into the academics of the year and the things that make them grown, like Kristen said, when we tell them about them, period, and set them up with a framework of looking at executive function as something that they can work on and that our whole community is going to work on together. So it becomes part of our classroom norms and part of our learning expectations to increase what your personal best is in these areas over time. And knowing that those are things that they can work on and they're a place where they're going to be understood, we find that that is really helpful to our students. Another big piece of our puzzle has to do with our small class sizes because students don't slip through the cracks. So that is a privilege that we have at our school. We have generally an 8-to-1 ratio in middle school, so we're here to catch students when they need support or coaching. And every student has an advisor who they see at the beginning and the end of the day, and that person winds up having a really close relationship with each student, kind of helping them along the way, giving coaching. so that they can make sure they're staying on top of assignments and planning ahead and managing all their responsibilities that come with moving into middle school.
Time management. This is a big area of skill development for our kids, and to be perfectly honest, I think it's a challenge for adults at times as well. But this is one of the fundamental skills that we work with our kids on from day one. Many students that come to us or that have EF challenges are, the literature calls it, they are time blind. They just have no sense of what 20 minutes means, what 30 minutes means. So our approach to helping them understand that is to literally make time visible. So a teacher will create a task or some project that they have to work on in class, and we will mark it on an analog clock, like you can see in the slide here. The green slided in is our work time. The yellow is kind of a preparation and get ready time. And then the very end is the red for a cleanup time. And we will use this repeatedly over the course of the year so that students begin to physically feel and understand what that 20 minutes means. Time estimation is another big one. I talked about that in the context of a homework assignment. Well, we will do that in class as well when a teacher lays out, okay, here's what we need to get done today. What do you guys think is a reasonable amount of time to accomplish this? And then we will design that on the clock, and then that'll be a good learning tool too. You know, was the class accurate in their prediction, or were they inaccurate? And again, when you do that repeatedly over time, over the course of the year and across multiple subjects, it really helps to build that that sense of time. As Michael mentioned, the advisor role is super important, checking in particularly in that afternoon time to talk with the students about what their homework looks like for that evening. We use planners in middle school, and throughout the course of the day, teachers are very directive as to what students need to write in their planners. They will often put it up on the board, and students copy what the assignment is. Of course, it's intended to be very legible and understandable so that when the student gets home, they know exactly what they need to do. And so when the advisor goes through with the student, they'll say, okay, well, what do you have for homework tonight? Do you have all your materials with you? Do you understand what you need to do? But then there's also, okay, what else are you doing this evening? What other commitments do you have? Do you have a practice for soccer or baseball or basketball? Do you have a music lesson? And so then we'll work on it in a bigger time level. So what is your plan for the evening? How are you going to get this done? Are you going to get your homework done before you go to your extracurricular or after? We talk about managing time robbers. So things like, when is it going to be the best time to get this done? Are you going to get your homework done before? So because more than likely by the time you get home from practice, you're going to be tired. So thinking kind of through those, when is the best time to get everything done? But then oftentimes we'll take a step back, like on Mondays at the beginning of the week, and also say, okay, what does your whole week look like, especially for our kids that have a lot of commitments outside of school? If you know you're going to have a really busy night on Tuesday or Wednesday, how can we plan ahead so that you're going to get your assignments done over the course of the week? So time management is something that we focus on quite a bit.
As you take a look at this slide, I'm hoping you're noticing those smiling faces. And I have these kids here because I think you might be surprised to learn that these are in fact students who don't always, who haven't always traditionally loved doing projects at school. But we know that planning is a super important thing to work on with our students. So even though it is not something that every student comes to us loving, we spend a lot of time working with students to develop their ability to plan out projects and things of different sizes so that they can be successful in working on this. So as you see on the board or on the slides, we have students work sometimes with fun crafts projects, things like this, where they can visualize what their finished product is, think about the steps that'll go into it, and work towards a goal. And a lot of times we start with fun things like this, but it's something that also extends to academics, and we use similar routines throughout the year as we teach students to do backward planning. And this next slide is a student-facing slide that we actually use in the beginning of the year when we're building our classroom culture, talking about what it means to do a good job with planning something effectively. So we encourage students to make sure they're starting with a really robust mental image of what they're working towards, that they know what their goal is. And after they have that image in their mind, they have to do a task analysis and think about what are the steps that they need to take to make this reality. We encourage them to think about what are the materials they're going to need and break it down so that before they even started working on their project in any way, they have a plan in their head of what they're working towards, how they're going to do it, what they need. Then we encourage them to, once they've planned that work, it's time to work the plan. So get the things you need, be considerate of time, and as they work, also to be reflective and think about, did it turn out the way they wanted, and are there other things they need to do?
Just as Michael said, we take that same planning process that we may have introduced it with more of a fun project with the catapults, for example, but then we take the same strategy and apply it to academic tasks. So here you see a slide that I just had up on my board last week when we were making vocabulary cards in science. You can see that on the right-hand side in the done column, there's a very clear visual picture of what the finished product is supposed to look like. That is key for kids with EF challenges. The visual is just super helpful. It clicks for them in a way that the language piece often doesn't. Then in the middle, the green section, you'll see the do, and it's, like Mike said, a task analysis of how am I going to create these vocab cards. And then over in the left-hand column with the get ready, it's a list of the materials that they need. So this is a fairly simple task, right, of assembling the vocab cards, but this get ready, do done strategy works really well even for more complicated projects. And if you also notice, the red, yellow, and the green ties in with the working clock that we showed you a couple slides ago when we're trying to build some skills around time management. All of these EF skills, they intertwine and they overlap and they develop concurrently. So when we can bring in some consistency, even with just the color scheme, that's helpful.
Another area that we like to try and help our students with is metacognition. And metacognition is sometimes defined as thinking about your thinking. And as we approach this with our students, we're really trying to help to make sure that they're learning how to consider their process, their approach, and the final products that they're making and putting out into the world. We want them to learn how to question themselves as they work and thinking about if they're being efficient and effective. So that they can just essentially be reflective and monitor the quality of their work as they're going, and learn from things as they go. So the image that you see on the board is a student who's just successfully executed an egg drop. So it's kind of a classic science class activity. One of the things that we do with our students is we encourage them to, well, not encourage, we set them up to do the get ready, do done, to design their egg drops and work on how they're going to accomplish this feat of dropping an egg off a balcony and having it not crack. But beyond just giving them that challenge, we also give them opportunities to try it and revise as they work so that they can learn from what they've done and reflect on what's successful and think about what things they can do differently so that they can work through the problem and find success. And, you know, like all of the other areas, this is something where we have to try and encourage a growth mindset so that students will build their skills and learn to have a good attitude when at first they don't succeed and learn to master new skills. And that last bullet point on there, talking about strategies that play to their strengths, is also, I think, something that's really special about Groves Academy. our small class sizes allow us to really get to know our students and to understand how they work, what their strengths are as well as their challenges, so that they can learn what's going to work for them best as a learner and learn how to be effective in any number of tasks given those strengths and challenges.
Okay, so we've walked through a couple specific EF skills and explained a bit about how we try to build them over the course of a school year, but we also want to let you know that every class period is set up in a manner to help kids succeed. And again, I'm going to bring up Michael's point about the small class sizes. That really allows us to do this because we get to know our kids so well. We know within a couple of weeks of school, each student's strengths and weaknesses from an executive functioning perspective. So some of the things that we do, we provide directions in multiple formats and examples. Of course, we give directions verbally. We will do that slowly based upon the kids in front of us. The directions will also be in visual format and put in a form. So I'll give a homework assignment. I'll explain it in class, but then I will use that same language in Google Classroom. So when my student goes home that evening and is opening up my literature assignment, they're going to see the same language and exactly how I presented it in class. They may also see a visual, even for a writing program. Like right now we're working on a compare and contrast essay. I've drawn out just, on the board in rectangles and squiggly lines what their end product is going to look like. Again, because those visuals are so important. A really big thing here at Groves is the power of routines. So often our students may have struggles with working memory, like how much information they can juggle at one time, or in terms of processing speed. So one thing that really helps with that is if we have a consistent routine for our class. They know where their materials are located in the class. They know what I'm going to be asking them to do. So for example, in my literature and writing class, most often I will start with some fluency practice at the beginning of class. And then we'll move into reading our class novel. So there will be a discussion base with that activity, as possibly answering some comprehension questions. And then we'll move on to writing class, which will shift between working on sentence level as well as some more essays. But they know that's how I set up class each day, so they know what to expect. That allows them to free up the cognitive space to pay attention to what's new, to pay attention to those novel skills and hone in on what is the teacher asking me to do and what new skills am I working on mastering. We have schedules posted for the class schedule. If it's a day where we're doing something fun and our schedule is out of the ordinary, that will be posted around. Again, so that information is readily accessible, so they don't have to hold everything in mind all the time. We have regular brain breaks. In class, we ask our kids to work hard all day long in every class. So we have breaks scheduled at strategic times in the day so they get that break, which is super important for our kids that have EF challenges. It just allows them to function better. And then again, the time robbers, helping them to manage those. And again, they're particular ones. So the student-teacher relationship comes in again. We know what subjects are hard for a kid, or we know that they often get tired at such and such a time of day. So we talked to them about that, and what are some strategies that the student can use to manage that, and how can the teacher be supportive in that time. I think that wraps up our middle school presentation, so we are going to now pass it along to Mr. Tolan.
Thank you. I don't think anyone's ever said the sentence I'm about to say, and that is, your part of the presentation made me wish I could go back to middle school. So if, the students in middle school have a lot on their plate. There's a lot of change also in once you reach upper school or high school. One of the big things is increased choices and autonomy, including the choice in class size, class size. We're talking a lot about class size today. No, the choice of what classes you take in terms of electives and different levels and kinds of like science and math offerings. High school is also a really critical time of identity formation for adolescents, and the executive functioning course that we've designed for the upper school has that in mind with helping with that. It's a different set of teachers. So for students who started with our great middle school team, it in some ways is like starting over. And there's not an increased focus on homework, but maybe a different focus on homework that is, again, going to demand a little bit more autonomy from some of our learners. Students have extracurriculars just like they may in middle school, but in addition to sports and lessons and clubs, a lot of our students start working jobs, and they have more responsibility for themselves and for others, and that includes driving and other sort of self-management of their lives. And they have more responsibility for their future, for figuring out what they want to do after Groves, as they say, or just figuring out what they want to do next week, planning out longer term projects that don't have, I guess, as much external structure to them. So high school, it's hard for anybody, and a lot of our students sort of struggle with some of the same executive functioning challenges that the middle school team described. Poor time estimation continues to be an issue we see. Anecdotally, one of the things I've noticed is that students will conflate like the number of steps something has with sort of how long it will take. So they'll see, oh, there's just 2 steps, and not really consider that step 2 is going to take 45 minutes. Students don't always check work for quality. They sort of get that mental reward once they kind of reach the end of the page, and then it's a lot less motivating to go back to the beginning and look through it. And so we, our antidote to that, like the middle school group said, is focusing on process. Students on into adolescence continue to have that difficulty with social cues, and something that kind of not gets worse, but becomes more central later on in the teenage years, is that big disconnect between having an immature frontal lobe, where a lot of the executive functioning skills reside, and a relatively mature limbic system, which is like this primeval like emotion and threat detection system. So if you have like the, you know, King Kong sized limbic system, but you still have like a, I don't know, marshmallow beep. I was in a drugstore recently. Size maturity frontal lobe, there's going to be a balance there that has to be addressed. And the tendency, so in research for like, people who've experienced like trauma and serious life events can interpret neutral affect as a threat, and another group that has a very similar profile as far as neutral affect, so like ambiguous facial expressions, is adolescents. And they can also struggle with task initiation, which is just starting the darn thing, and motivation, having a hard time balancing urgency and importance, which are related, and then also interest and novelty. One big difference between the upper school and the middle school is that we designed a 4-year executive functioning curriculum that serves to introduce our students to the EF skills, teach them a variety of skills and strategies, and also give them kind of like a laboratory for learning and applying them sort of alongside their peers in a safe and supported way. Every student has an advisor, and especially in your first year in the upper school, that advisor is often the teacher you have for class. And that is someone who helps you at the beginning of the day and at toward the middle of the morning, look at your assignments for the day, plan, prioritize, look at the week ahead, and figure out what are your top level goals that you're working on, and how are you going to spend your time today. We also have executive functioning supports built into our classroom routines. And one of the biggies is a shared vocabulary around EF concepts. So when students go from EF class to EF class, they're using the same terminology for the same things, but they'll also be hearing a lot of those same terms from their content area teachers. And we also have small classes, like at the beginning of the year, I've heard someone say, I can't believe I have 11 students in this class, and like, we should be so lucky, right? And that focus on growth and focus on relationships between parents and students, or teachers and students. So we have these 4 years of the EF curriculum, and each year has its own focus, but there are some things that are the same from year to year. And some of those most important things are mindfulness practice, building that shared executive functioning vocabulary, making a connection between strong executive functioning and having a growth mindset, learning more about the brain, both in general and in the specifics of the student's own learning profile, and being able to kind of have that executive functioning hands-on laboratory where alone in small groups, they're going to be able to apply their executive functioning skills and strategies. And that can be an academic context or a real world context or a creative context. And the service learning component is a great real world context, which you'll hear about in a moment, but it's a good opportunity for students just to get out in the world and apply some of what they've learned. We also focus a lot on self-reflection, the metacognition that Michael was talking about before. So not just taking them through the process, but then guiding them back for the beginning and having them look at it and say, like, so what was that thing you just did? What did that do for you? What does that connect you with? Now, the first thing I mentioned is mindfulness, and there's a reason for that. It's because I think the mindfulness piece is really important. There are some huge benefits to mindfulness, including reduced stress and anxiety or fatigue during the day, increased ability to learn, and part of that is the increased ability to focus on the present moment, the ability to upregulate, which would maybe mean bringing your energy and attention kind of back up from baseline, and that's what we see at the beginning of the day when we've got people hunched down on their desk, or downregulate when people come in after lunch and being outside in May and being really excited, being able to sit down, have that moment of mindfulness and then focus on what we're doing in class. And I think the most important thing that I've seen for my students is that increased compassion, not just for other students, which a lot of our kids already have coming in, but the ability to apply that strong compassion and empathy to themselves, which is often a lot harder. So the 3 important components of mindfulness that we look at Groves are paying attention on purpose, which obviously goes along with what the executive functioning parameters are, focusing on the present moment and doing it without judgment. On the screen is an example of student work. I really like the imagery, but I also really love what it says, and I'll read it to you in case it doesn't come through clearly. Mindfulness lets me learn from my feelings without being overwhelmed by them. And that's a good connection to the executive functioning skill of emotional control. We also talk a lot at the beginning of every school year about growth mindset and the importance of adopting a growth mindset when it comes to school or when it comes to kind of any area of potential growth. And this is the idea that through my own effort and actions, I can change my capacity. I can change what I'm capable of. So adopting this outlook consistently doesn't just change your internal life, your beliefs or your focus or like the little stories you tell yourself about why you're being successful or not, but those internal changes lead to really visible external changes. It increases your effort. It makes you more resilient in the face of obstacles. It makes you take ownership of your mistakes and learn from them rather than avoid confronting them. And it allows you to take corrective feedback and even harsh criticism. Not that I offer a lot of harsh criticism in my classes, but to take criticism without taking it personally. And I have a growth mindset about my growth mindset. I know that for some of these things, I'm a work in progress, as are we all. Another common component throughout the years is the service learning component. It's a great opportunity for students to apply their EF skills, especially time management, organization, and goal-directed persistence, the kind of committing yourself to doing something and seeing it through. It's a resume builder in the obvious ways, like it's something colleges look for, but it's also a great opportunity for students to identify causes and passions worthy of their time and energy that they might not have considered and build skills that the modern workforce is looking for, in particular technology and communication skills. If we have a textbook, the closest thing would be our planner. One of the things that we like about our upper school planner is that every year it changes, maybe a little bit, maybe a lot, in response to student feedback. So every year the layout has a lot that's similar to it, but there's maybe some tweaks here and there that are just going to help students kind of use it more intuitively and efficiently. The design includes a month view and a week view, which allows students and teachers to have kind of long and short-term talks about day-to-day homework, but also long-term assignments, and have a bird's eye view of extracurriculars. And it's a great place for communication to happen, student to teacher, teacher to teacher. So like between classes from day to day, I've sometimes looked for notes in the planner, and definitely teacher to parent. Now I'm going to get into the 4 years in a little bit more detail, but not too much detail. So in ninth grade, the ninth graders are the new kids on the block. They are all getting on the same page about growth and about EF, because some are coming up from middle school and some are new to our school. So we focus on what is EF, the overview you just got, but instead of 30 seconds, it's more like 2 weeks. We look into mindfulness practice, talk about growth mindset, and we delve into the 12 core EF skills and accompanying strategies that we have identified as being key for success in high school and afterwards. And their kind of capstone project for the year is a Shark Tank, where they design, they go from the problem stage of like, what is an unsolved problem in the world? And that could be a problem like, I have ice dams on my roof. It doesn't have to be a huge problem. Come up with a product or a concept of some kind of invention that would address that problem. Do market research and identify like a demographic that would work for, and also work in a team and solve a real world problem using both executive functioning skills and interpersonal skills. In 10th grade, the focus is on kind of figuring out who they are in general. So they look at their learning profile, including and especially focusing on accommodations and modifications. Then we do like a month and a half long deep dive into neuroscience in the teenage brain, where students will do like a research question that they'll use like primary source material for. It's pretty incredible. We look at motivation and, more importantly, what gets in the way of that motivation. And then we end the year with neurodiversity, and students develop a strength-based narrative of who they are. The capstone project for 10th grade is a poster session where students come up with a research question that starts with what happens in the brain when, and they can be anything from like what happens in the brain when I smell McDonald's French fries to what happens in the brain when you have major depression. So they can range from silly to serious, but they're always really insightful, and this year they've turned out especially well. These are some things that students in our early years of teaching the EF class have said about the teenage brain. I'm not going to read them all to you, but I'll pull out a couple gems. I really love this last one. The teen brain is a wild place. Amen, sister. The teen brain is still very much developing, and it can be challenging because teens are experiencing changes with their bodies, hormones, emotions, and sleep. Another really great one, I think, is I think that teachers should recognize that the teen brain is under a lot of pressure and change. I think a lot of our kids spend so much time sort of showing us and everybody else that they're okay that we can forget just how much pressure they're under, both externally and from us as teachers. So this is a helpful reminder for all. In 11th grade, the focus is on thinking about the future and on the student themselves as a leader. So they will look at not just colleges, but other sort of post-secondary training and education and certificate programs. Do like a career inventory and look at the types of skills needed to perform a lot of modern day careers and occupations, including but not limited to the EF skills. Go through the process of developing a resume and writing a cover letter, having some interview skills along with some mock interviews with some of our, not just faculty, but staff throughout the building here. Learn about leadership styles, including internal and external leadership. And their capstone is really wonderful. I think it's an advocacy project. So they spend a semester of the year, developing like a campaign to research and communicate the importance of an area of societal impact, often finding an on-the-ground way to lead peers as an example to further this cause. So what you can see on the right here is a poster a student did about the dangers of plastics in the ocean. In 12th grade, they are really focused on the future. If 11th grade started to look at it, they're really focused on it. What comes next and what they leave behind. So legacy is a major theme, and leaving a legacy here. And another major theme is just dusting off every other thing they've done the rest of the time here as far as their EF curriculum and figuring out how to apply it to whatever the next chapter is. Their end of the year capstone is their senior speech. They take turns coming up to the podium in the theater, often to an audience of friends, families, and teachers present and past. It's kind of a victory lap for them, but it's also an opportunity for deep reflection. Students to talk about their individual journeys that led them here, their journeys while they're here, and what path lies ahead of them. And it's a celebration for kind of everyone who's there to support them of who this person is before sending them out into the world. So these are some things that parents told us, I think after the second year of the executive functioning program. How would you describe the course to someone outside the school community? The course is a necessary curriculum piece for all students to explore their strengths and opportunities for development. It will expose students to opportunities to build habits and mindsets that will serve them the rest of their lives. A course that helps the student manage the stresses of school, emotional relationships in their daily life, to build skills that will guide their lives into their futures. Fantastic. A course that helps students gain the skills to take control over their thinking, the importance and application of planning everything in school and beyond, and that your brain can and will grow with persistence. And some of the benefits of the EF course that we've noticed in our students, some of them intended, some of them are just really great dividends. This theme of I'm not the only one, hearing each other's stories and learning not just about their own learning profile, but those of others can help them connect to each other with empathy and realize that like life so far may have had its struggles, but everyone has different struggles and similar struggles, and hearing about those struggles can be a moment of vulnerability, but it can also be a moment of connection. An enhanced ability to discuss their thoughts and feelings, that shared vocabulary, and learning about emotional control helps teach and reinforce the habit of accurately naming how you're feeling both to yourself and to other people, which can help you in the moment regain mastery over that emotion and not lose focus on whatever your goal might be. An unexpected benefit is it's led to dinner table conversation. We've had parents say, like, I haven't been able to get her to talk about school since 4th grade, and now she's talking about her day and about growth mindset, and like I'm supposed to do a executive functioning skills inventory, and that is just really wonderful to hear about. I'm thinking about my own really little kids, and I really hope that I'm going to be able to have great dinner table conversations with them throughout their middle school and high school careers. There's a great matchup between an opportunity to think about careers and their executive functioning profile. And there's just a great sense of community that we definitely started with it as an upper school, but I feel like school culture and classroom culture has only benefited from having a dedicated executive functioning skills class at Groves. So that's what I've got to say about how we support executive functioning skills in the upper school. I'm going to turn it back over.
Thanks, Andy, and thank you, Kristen, and thank you, Michael. That was so informative. I'm going to turn it back over to Erica before we start taking questions. So if you do have questions, please send them into the chat. Erica.
Yeah, so I just wanted to really briefly put up the admissions process. Some of you on the webinar today may already be in process with me and applying, and some of you, this might be your first introduction to Groves Academy, and you might be thinking, maybe I need to look at this for my child. If you are interested in, engaging with us and talking about the admissions process, I encourage you to get in touch. At the very end, I will put up my contact information, but I wanted to just let you know that the first step is starting a conversation. So if you haven't had a conversation with admissions, you're interested, you want to connect with us, we are here. So then we'll move on to questions. Nancy, has anything come into the chat that you would like us to address?
I don't see any questions yet, and that's just fine. And that could be because the content was so comprehensive and informative. I'll pose one question to our panel here, and then that'll give our attendees a little bit of time if they do have a question to send it in. And if you don't, that's just fine. Can you talk a little bit about, as families are exploring a new school experience for their incoming middle schooler or their incoming high schooler, which is such a tender time to change to a new school, but their child has executive function challenges. Can you talk a little bit about why is what you talked about today, how and why is that so different than what other schools may be doing?
I think one of the most obvious things is that we address it explicitly. We name the skills. We teach them what those skills mean. We point them out as their strengths and weaknesses in class on a daily basis, and then we address it over the long haul. Very much the growth mindset piece. It's like everybody's got strengths and weaknesses. If I've said that once, I've said it 1,000 times, and I share what my strengths and weaknesses are. And when I screw up in class, I'll point it out. Oh, I made a mistake. Gee, what do you think this looks like from an EF perspective? So just normalizing it, and again, trying to make it a positive, or recognizing that everybody has strengths and weaknesses, and there's strategies on how to compensate for your weaknesses and to build on your strengths.
Thanks, Kristen. I think about so many students where in many school environments that they may be in right now, there's this assumed executive function skill that exists, right? That we assume that that's automatically developing, but what we know is that sometimes it needs to be explicitly taught. Andy, were you going to add something?
Oh, yeah, no, I was just going to add that, you hear about, there's a hidden curriculum, and one of those hidden curriculum pieces is that, they're just going to learn executive functioning skills by doing the types of tasks that require strong executive functioning, and we'll just make those tasks incrementally more difficult, and they'll just get increasingly better at them. And that works for enough students enough of the time that it's not a terrible strategy to adopt as kind of like your frontline approach to teaching school. I personally think that executive functioning should be taught, to every adolescent everywhere. That would have made life a lot easier for me. But I do think most of us pick up the things we need to pick up most of the time, with small enough gaps that we can get by. But that's not what I want for my students. I tell them I want them to learn at 16 what I didn't learn until I was 26. And that is how to kind of not just know about these skills, but to be able to apply them in the wild in a way that is authentic and helpful for achieving the things they want to achieve and having the types of opportunities that they want to be able to have.
That's great. Thanks, Andy. Applying them in the wild is one of my new favorite phrases. And I feel like the capstone projects, especially in the upper school, are really good examples of that. A question did come through. Erica, I'm going to pose this question to you. If a family is waiting on diagnostic testing to specifically maybe look at executive functioning or ADHD, can they still start the application process at Groves Academy?
Yeah, great question. So I would encourage you, even while you're still exploring and doing testing and getting a diagnosis, to get in touch with Groves and have a conversation with either myself or one of our family navigators to start to understand your child's profile. We do need either a private diagnostic assessment, psychoeducational evaluation, and or an IEP evaluation to complete the admissions process, but sometimes there are elements of the admissions process that you can start while you're waiting for that final report to come through. So definitely get in touch. It's not too early to have a phone call to learn more about our admissions process, and we can help guide you in the right timing and the necessary materials that we need to complete that application.
That's great. And I think about there's so many families that enter our admission process where there's quite a few pieces of paperwork that we collect as part of the application. So sometimes while you're waiting for that testing to come back, Erica can help you to focus on what are the other pieces that I need to get in. And then by the time you get those in, the testing is back and then everything kind of lines up nicely. That's a good question. Okay, well, we're just a couple of minutes to 1 o'clock, so thank you so much. I'll let Erica bid us farewell by just showing her email. And then Erica, just can you give us a quick 1 minute on these upcoming events and what families might be interested in?
Certainly. So if those of you on the call are interested in exploring Groves further, we have some great events coming up. The first is tomorrow, we have an open house. We'll also have one in May as well. We would invite you to join us to learn more about the Academy experience, do a tour of the school, hear from some other key staff and faculty, as well as current Groves students and parents that sit on a panel to answer questions. We also have a summer informational session coming up on March 14th. We have an Affording Groves event on March 20th talking about different financial pathways to a Groves education. And again, like I said, another upcoming open house in April. So lots of opportunities to learn more about the offerings at Groves Academy and Flow in general. And then also just in closing, like I said, I have my email up there. You can go onto our website to get in touch with one of our family navigators. I encourage you to reach out, have a phone call, have a conversation so that we can get to know more about your child's individual profile and talk about if Groves Academy might be a fit for your family.
Thank you all. We hope you have a lovely afternoon in this odd spring-like winter weather that we're having. So have a great rest of your day, and thanks so much for joining us. Bye.